Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Last season, me, Alex, and Aaron made a bunch of videos after every single fight, talking sort of about how we prepped for each one, what happened during the fight, as well as some behind the scenes of damage. We've been behind this season, so we appreciate all of you hanging in there. And because of that, we're going to be doing a recap in this video of all the fights we've had, including Tantrum versus Minotaur, Blip versus Endgame, Blip versus Huge, and of course, Tantrum versus Hydra. So this will be a little longer than the others, but hang in there. And again, sorry for the delay. We'll be doing these again throughout the rest of the season. So if you have any questions or things you want us to talk about, feel free to DM us on Instagram at seems.reasonable or on Facebook, or leave a comment here. So yeah, I guess just to kick things off, this year we came back with both our beloved robots, Tantrum and Blip, as many of you probably already know. And Blip was in a large part similar this season. Aaron, do you want to talk a little bit about what has changed or what hasn't changed?
Yeah, so on the Blip side of stuff, a lot of it was like quality of life improvements. We were able to compete at the Amazon Remars event with Blip and learn some things there. So made some updates to how batteries connect. We had a bad solder joint. And then a couple of things that were just, the goal is make it a bit more drivable with regards to the whole, I turn right, I do a wheelie. It's a very annoying problem. So we had put some work into taming that. But for the most part, like the flipper power, et cetera, is all the same. Similar front end ground game technology, et cetera. So, and also prepped a couple configs because we knew we might have to start facing some weirder people.
Yeah, definitely the target was more on all of our backs this season. So there was a lot more prep work that went in. Speaking of which, Alex, do you want to tell us as well about the Tantrum upgrades, of which there were many more, as Alex and I jokingly said during many of our interviews. I don't think any was ever used, but the producers were likely sick of us saying, it's a brand new
It's a
Tantrum.
whole new Tantrum. Yeah.
Every part is brand new.
Yep. Yeah, so going through season 6 with the championship run that we had basically not enough parts to build a new robot or to be able to assemble Tantrum again. We ran through all of our spares and could just barely, limp along the finish line and got through it and got the win there, got the win against Tombstone, and then lost to Endgame. But at that point, we had to make a decision. Do we go back and make new parts for this, or do we start from scratch, upgrade what we want to upgrade, and build a whole new Tantrum? And so we decided, okay, let's step back, let's upgrade everything that we were unhappy with and move forward with a new build. So yes, everything on Tantrum is new this year. It's a new chassis, new weapon system, new armor setup, basically everything. And so a few key points that we were trying to upgrade there. The armor, like the side armor, all the orange stuff, was a big pain to get on and off the previous season. So we changed how that mounts, tried to pull some weight out of the mounting methodology, as well as making it so, like I said, it's not a pain to get in and out. Because after like the Gigabyte fight last year, our bolts were bent, a good 30 degrees, and those absorbed a lot of energy, which is good for us, but getting those in and out were a big pain after those fights. So we simplified that. We also decided, hey, let's try to make the weapon spin up a lot more reliably, a lot faster. So instead of going from internal brushless hub motor like we've been using the previous years, we decided to do an out of the disc motor. So that's an in runner that has a belt going up to it, and so it's still all on the carriage, but that allowed us to put a sensor on the motor to have a lot faster startup. Beyond that, it's looks really similar, which was the goal, but as you start looking more and more at it, you can see the differences. And so pretty happy with the overall changes. Going into the season, we probably should have knocked a few of these out like a month prior to going to the competition, because we were definitely finishing as we got there, which was unfortunate, but that's how it goes. That's how Battlebots goes. So
Yeah, I think with new changes, and I feel like this has already been said over and over again, like Alex mentioned with a timeline, obviously we could have sorted a lot of those things out, but some things you just don't know. until you get into the battle box. And so there definitely were a lot of little kinks we were working out that we experienced, such as you may have seen in our first fight against Minotaur. So just jumping right into our first fight. Actually, before I do that, we wanted to share this cute picture, which you may have already seen, which is of the siblings together.
Yeah, it turns out when they do hero shots, you can say, hey, can we do both together, please? And they'll let you bring out both your robots.
It was not easy getting both robots in at the same time for this hero shot in the first few days. There was a lot of stress and juggling and sort of, we have to make a robot ready to actually fight, but then at the same time, we got to get like the B-roll and stuff out of the way. So that was fun.
Right.
And then before our Minotaur fight,
We I got that banner up in the rafters. It was actually entertaining when we went and did the hero shots. The cover was still over the Tantrum banner, and obviously we knew, oh hey look, there's gonna be a Tantrum banner. And as we were walking over there, Pete Abramson, the belt whisperer, was back there, and I whispered to him, so you gonna reveal that right before we walk out and get our ass kicked by Minotaur, because we already knew about the Minotaur fight, and he just gave me this this death glare I'll never forget, and a nice chuckle as he walked away. But
yeah,
it's super cool to be part of that row of robots up there, and that's up there forever.
Yeah, so that was super exciting. And with all of this pressure, we went into our fight against Minotaur, and we had a new front end, which we referred to the swordfish. You can sort of see it here. It's a triangular shaped object. Alex, do you want to talk about sort of what the thought process was behind that?
Yeah, I mean, with drums and large front end, like spinning masses, so Minotaur, Riptide, robots like that, one strategy is to try to scoop underneath that weapon. And so here we had one idea to be able to do this. You can see some other people's implementations do a similar thing later on in the season. Like Cobalt Minotaur, that just happened. That was another attempt to do a similar thing, just different implementation. So we had the swordfish that comes together and tries to get underneath their weapon to try to scoop them, because ultimately Tantrum is a control robot, and we wanted to try to control Minotaur through the fight. Obviously didn't work out super great. The swordfish needed more weight allocated to it, I think. We needed it to be thicker. Obviously it gets peeled up here in this photo is probably midway through the match after the first few interactions. And if you watch the match through again, the swordfish worked like until it didn't.
Yeah.
So I think we had 2 good interactions before the tip peeled up, and then eventually we got flipped over. But yeah, that was the front end, and it was fun.
Yeah, and here's a picture of us flying through the air. One of the things that sort of was a happy accident is on our self-rider, we have a clutch, and that makes sure that we don't get too much force all the way back in our gearbox. So we're not breaking little gears and stuff. Because when you fall on your back, or if you've got a lot of force going on, you want the energy to be able to go somewhere. And so when that happens, the clutch will actually slip. So it's like a protective mechanism. And that comes with setting how tight you sort of want that friction to be and how much force is required for it to slip. And last year, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we did a ton of sort of fiddling with the clutch. I think we set it and it worked and it was great and it seemed to work pretty well. And this year, when we were actually going into the box against Minotaur, we had one flip that worked. And then on our second flip, we heard a whir, or on our second self-riding test, we heard a whirring noise, sort of like a come from the self-ride when we were attempting to do that. And so with like literally 5 minutes to go before getting in the box, we did not have the option to take off all the armor, take off all the shoulders, take everything apart to get the self-ride out. It's a very, very involved process to access that gearbox, including like basically taking the drivetrain off. And what we ended up doing is just taking that clutch. And I distinctly remember in my mind, in a lot of panic, Aaron went like this with all of his mighty force. And Aaron is a really strong guy. So we set that clutch all the way. And then, of course, what happened is when Minotaur flipped us high in the air, the clutch didn't slip. The friction was too high. And we actually broke some of our gears in our gearbox, which was...
Right. Yeah. Getting your self-riders like hit by one of the deadliest spinners in Battlebots directly through the gear train. Not a good plan, but it's what we had to do.
Yeah.
The time
That's,
given.
yeah, and everything's a learning opportunity. It's the first time, well, like there were changes between last year's Self-Rider and this year's, and being able to get it together is one thing, but then being able to have the process figured out for it and clutch that to the right level was stuff that we just hadn't been able to flesh out yet at that point. So not a great position going into the fight, but
yeah, I mean, it worked.
Got into the fight. Yeah,
it worked once or twice, so that was good. And then we sort of got smashed. That's okay. So here's some pictures. Obviously, we lost that match to a knockout. Here's some pictures of sort of the damage. Here you can see the swordfish. And then what was a little frightening, which I don't think we've talked about yet, was the armor. Alex, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So there's supposed to be another Tang coming over top here that's actually sheared. You can see that at the midpoint of the armor here, the shoulder. It actually clean sheared the 3/16 titanium plate that comes in. Yeah, right there.
So where there's shiny light metal is shiny because a piece broke off, basically. That's why there's no paint there.
This is effectively identical mounting to what Blip ran last year, and we kind of ended up getting, I would say, false confidence in it because it was way easier to take on and take off and put on. But also Blip never really got hit hard last year. So this Minotaur hitting this armor is the hardest hit we've ever had the armor mounting scheme. So in this case, that Tang's gone, but also the armor's still on. So
yeah,
it's hanging on by its front up here.
Yep. So, and you can see the arm sheared off. That was unfortunate, but yeah, that's why we have spares.
Yeah. I think we have maybe 8.
Yeah.
I think it was 7. I bet 7 this year,
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that was our Minotaur fight. Obviously, it's disappointing to come back from a win from the Giant Nut and lose our first match. But if there's any team to lose to, Minotaur is definitely the one. They were super dominant and it was a great fight for them. So anyhow, we're excited.
And we had our first main event. That was my favorite part. All of season 6, I
main event.
Yeah, I was joking, half joking, half serious. It's like, hey, one thing that would be really fun to get out of this year. This is, season 6 would be getting a main event right through the season. And we didn't get any main events with either Tantrum or Blip until we were forced to get a main event at the end
in the final
championship. And so for example, they have you sit down and do interviews in a separate space when you're doing main events. And I'll never forget Ginger and I going over there and we're just like, okay, hey, we're here for our interview. And they're just like, oh yeah, just set up how you normally do. And this is the last day of filming for the last main event, the last thing that they're doing. And they're just like, yeah, just go sit wherever you normally do. And we're just like, this is our first time being here. I have no idea what you expect from us. So yeah, it was really cool to see the team get the first main event and then the second main event, which I think could transition.
That 1 week later, here we are again. And man, these schedule makers really had it out for us this year. Let's just say first Minotaur, now Endgame. Aaron, do you want to talk a little bit about how you guys prepped for this?
Oh, hop back one slide. We just see how it starts. Yeah, it's missing a yeah.
Missing one.
It's fun. This is the first year that they've actually told us the entire schedule ahead of time. So entertainingly, right before this fight, we're sitting there lined up, Endgame's on the other side of the tunnel, ready to go in. The fight happened that happened to 1 or 2 matches before us was Huge versus Shatter. So I watched, we got to sit there and watch Huge just destroy Shatter. And I'm watching going, we get to face that next after we face that. Oh, great. It was a funny mental space to be in. On the one hand, yes, schedule makers are being aggressive, but on the other hand, it's a heck of a compliment in terms of coming in with 2 robots and getting the schedules we did. And it's also the boat, if you're going to claim to be a top caliber robot, you got to face anybody there. So anybody who tries feeling bad for us, I'm like, nope, it's an honor and we get to see if we can rise to it. So coming into the end game fight, it's basically the game of who gets under who, which is very important with a flipper. Less important with a big spinny thing, but still important. And I'm as far as the fight goes, I'm happy we went the distance for the full 3 minutes. I am not happy we got 0 flips in. This was one of the the whole blip wheelie problem in terms of, oh, if I turn to the right, I do a wheelie. If the flywheel is spun up, it's an annoying one to try to translate through TV and interviews and such, because effectively from the driver, it's like, I would like to drive good. That means the flywheel's off. And if flywheel's off, you can't just flip when you get underneath somebody, which is basically means you need to pin them long enough to spin the flywheel up, which is like 5 seconds to full tilt. And that's far too long in the battle box. So mentally is in a weird spot coming into this fight in terms of where to play that one. And then also like, they're really good. So I managed to do a turn and sweep the piano keys right into their front end. Like, thumbs up. On the upside, halfway through the match, the beating stopped by their weapon breaking, which didn't know why until they took apart the robot after the fight. Nick was awesome enough to come over and hand us one of their exploded weapon bearings. So Blip went the full 3 minutes, lost the fight, but our face was durable enough to have Endgame's weapon break on it. I don't blame him for the post-fight interview saying sucking piano keys in stopped it, but I'm happy to know they just hit us so hard that they couldn't take their own hits. I'm like, okay, I'll take the tiny victory. I'm like, we lost, but I'll take the tiny victory. Thanks. So this is just a really fun tradition to be a part of for when you have cool failures and damaged parts coming out of fights of gifting to opponents.
Yeah, definitely.
But 0-1, not a great start. But against what I think the number 2 ranked or number 1 ranked. I think they're still number 1 ranked into the season. Yeah.
So then
other upside, as I mentioned earlier, to knowing the fights ahead of time is we had time to go through and finish our huge config, because I swear, like every team at the event has the conversation, what do we do against huge? But it's a weird one from a risk reward perspective, as far as, do you put in the time to finish your config for them when it's the thing that might happen versus putting in more work that will work for other people?
Yeah.
So on the upside, we had a set of shoulder armor made up that were able to bolt on additional panels to the outside. But then at the event, we went through and took material and stuff we had and finished designing and put on forks to be able to go to the ground with a concept of get underneath the wheels and actually flip huge. Definitely want to, go out there and have a robot fight, because one nice thing on the judging side of stuff is a pretty solid scoring matrix for how things get determined. So coming into this fight, they pretty much knew for us to win, it was going to be a 1-point win. 6 points us, 5 points them. So if the weapon would have still been working at the end of this fight, that would have flipped, because they beat us by 1 point. They got damaged 4-1 over us because our weapon stopped working and they still had all systems operating. It was nice to be able to have that level of I would say deterministicness going in, but we got some solid flips on them, better than the end game fight. Also huge hurts. There were some pretty solid punctures through the top of Blip. What ended up actually killing the weapon was an encoder cable getting pinched inside between one of the drive motors and the center flipper module. So it cut off the sensor to the flywheel motor. Aside from that, everything was operational. I believe there was a speed controller with a dented capacitor, but it was still working, but they got close enough to touch that. But you can see some of the hits on this one. Like the armor hoop there is 5/16 AR. I believe that one's AR 500. And that's huge going down into it. Also, this is also a fun one. Last year when Tantrum defeated Witch Doctor in the finals, Andrea had the wherewithal to be able to like stop and take a selfie across. So having that in mind was just like, oh, hey, he's unsticking. We can totally. So Brian and I were initially taking a selfie, and then Garrett from Huge runs over, and like I can't be mad at them like winning. Like Huge is awesome, and I love them for trying something new and out of the box and pushing it through till it's seeing success. And right now it's on a tear.
Speaking of Andrea, one of the things we did this year, well, and last year, I guess we keep getting worse, is one of our sponsors, West Coast Products, has a truck that they lend to us for the competition. And since we are in Northern California, it's a convenient but very long haul, of course, to drive all the way from Mountain View to Vegas. But we basically bring like 80% of our shop with us, including a literal lathe and drill presses and many other tools, one of the more popular ones of which is a hydraulic press. And so it was really fun seeing Battlebots in all sort of states of togetherness and bentness come in and try to press, including the entire Witch Doctor frame in our hydraulic presses.
Yeah, you know it's gonna be fun when someone rolls up in front of their pit, in front of your pit with their robot and gives you a look of like, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Witch Doctor's, and no spoilers for later, Witch Doctor's not the only other robot frame that went inside that press. There's at least like 5 more. But yeah, being able to go through and one, have the capability of to do a lot of stuff ourselves. We're also right across from the machine shop that BattleBots provides. But 2, being able to go through and help other people with stuff is a heck of a lot of fun.
Right. And you know, as we joke, if you don't finish your robot before you show up, you need all these tools
Yeah.
to finish it while you're there.
You're designing like a new front end configuration. You have to be on the mill like for 10 hours, you know, oh, like let's just remachine our whole weapon hubs. Like let's order $700 worth of material from McMaster. It's fine.
I still need to return that.
Yeah.
There's dangerous things about being having extremely large amounts of capability available to you.
Yeah,
it means you need to rein yourself in some. Yeah.
In any case, my personal favorite fight of the season so far, Tantrum versus Hydra. So this was an exciting.
You're saying this was the only one we won
so far.
That's why it's the favorite so far.
Hey,
I really like this picture because we're under Hydra.
That's how that's
yeah,
how you win.
mean, everybody wanted to see this happen. I was, to be honest, really nervous. I wasn't super thrilled about the schedule when we saw that we would have to fight. It felt like sort of like people were saying we had to prove ourselves again, you know, which I understand, but it is what it is. And we take with, you know, we deal with what we're dealt. So we went into the fight against Hydra, just sticking with what we know, and it worked out. Alex,
there was also a small update on, like, the rules between last year and this year are extremely similar. There's one line they added, and is if a robot's circling another robot, like that's the more aggressive maneuver. And that was pretty much added after this fight last year. And as all the judges doubled down as a clarification of just like, this is how that's going to be scored, by the way.
Yep. Yeah, and so it's interesting thinking like, yeah, do you want the rematch to happen now? Do you want to like let it mull over for a while? It's pretty interesting to see like the pros and cons to each. And so I mean, obviously we got the match now, and it's rip off the Band-Aid, you know, either prove that, you know, we had a winning robot and it's not impossible, right? That's what's interesting too, because like, you know, if we ended up winning this match, right? And some people still say, oh, that doesn't mean anything for the previous match, which, you know, I tend to agree with, but those same people will need to recognize that inversely if the match went the other way, right? And so it's interesting to see people's reaction in each direction, and it's whatever to me, you know. It's, you can have your opinion on your fight, but recognizing that Tantrum could have, you know, possibly beat Hydra last year, you know, is all we were after doing here, and we got the win. It was definitive. But sorry, going back to the fight, the pre-fight stuff. It's interesting. So you have to think, how are you going to beat Hydra, right? And obviously it's get underneath him and or outmaneuver him. The problem with that is he has no problem just kind of doing the sit and spin at times, But we actually saw Hydra at Amazon Remars when Blip also went to that, and he debuted a new front end there, which was a similar mechanism to what we do with Blip. And so we kind of knew that he would likely be running that against us. And one line they didn't use in our pre-fight that I was kind of sad about is, if you have a front end, right, you should know how to beat that front end, right? That's like the whole logical steps. You're just going to think, what are we going to lose to with this? It's like the rock, paper, scissors. And so we kind of knew what to do against Hydra in this case. And that's not driving circles around him, right? The goal here was have sharp forks, go in and just go directly into his front end. Don't try to get cute. And it took a lot of restraint from Dylan to trust that. And before the match, I kept telling him, trust the front end, trust the forks, right? Like, you just trust it and we will get that match. Because we knew that Hydra, the reason the reason they made this new front end is so that they could drive over seams, right? So they would be the aggressor at the start of this match. And knowing that, it's just go sharp and drive right into that interaction with authority. And obviously it carried us through the match and we got the win. It was really exciting. So, and then a lot of sparks too. Good photos out of this one.
Yeah.
Oh, and the self-rider worked. That was another.
Yeah, they showed it a little bit in the episode. It's cool. I think they're trying to throw in more sort of behind the scenes clips, but that self-rider was giving us issues all day. And we were in and out of the box. Like it was horrible all day, a lot of stress. And you can sort of see Jake and his other teammates watching us as we were going into the test box and out of the test box, into the test box and out of the test box.
Like, Wachi does make some pretty sweet pre-fight reels and stuff, but part of that means if you're facing them, they're just gonna have a dude with a camera following around all day.
Oh yeah.
And that definitely does some mental state stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun. Like I said, Tantrum, well, yeah, I mean, Aaron doesn't like when I say this, but last year we were also hobbling into every fight, like doing last minute stuff. And I do not condone that. I think that's horrible. It makes things very stressful. But there is, I think, a little bit of magic in the rush of energy that you get like 10 minutes before going into a match when everything works perfectly. Like it is so thrilling. Like it's the best feeling ever. Like that's one of the reasons why I like doing Battlebots. And I think that momentum made me at least feel super hyped going into our fight, despite being pretty nervous and pretty worried about it all day. So yeah, that was a very exciting rush. But yeah, the self-rider worked. Yay.
Yay.
TLDR.
Yep. And then some damage photos. So we were talking for quite a while after the match with Jake in the cooldown tent. And so, we plinked some of those front ends. It was pretty exciting seeing that. And then not only do we have the next photo, which will be a peel, like the peeled belly, but you can see some more damage that we did to the belly pan here. And we took out one of the drivetrains, but the thing that ended up actually winning the match is the same thing that we did to Witch Doctor last year in the finals, is that we peeled back the belly pan and that high centered Hydra and he couldn't drive anymore. But what also happened, which none of us realized at the time until they actually lifted Hydra up and moved, was that we hit the fill port for the manifold on Hydra. And so that silver bit there, we nicked the O-ring that was sealing all the high pressure hydraulic fluid, and Hydra just left oil all over the arena. And you can see the dripping bit out here. This is right again outside in the cooldown tent. And so no one's ever hit the manifold. I don't think anyone's gotten the belly pan to this degree either. So it was kind of, it's exciting to see this sort of damage. And that's, that's part of what we designed Tantrum for, is to hit you in weird places. And so design intent achieved. But yeah, good fight. And then now we have the Blip versus Tantrum fight coming up. So tune in on that one.
Yeah.
That should be exciting. We'll talk about the pre-fight and post-fight on our episode next week.
Yeah, and if I can just sort of recap I feel like it's definitely disappointing as a team right now to be 1-3 with only one loss. Or I
I
mean,
was very, very excitedly in the pits watching the Tantrum Hydra fight, screaming 1-3.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
yes,
but I mean, that's the nature of BattleBots. We are out here doing what we love with robots that we enjoy working on. I think it's a good wake-up call. I don't want to speak for Alex and Aaron. Maybe you guys can share how you feel, but I feel
I
like
mean, we've all been here since season 3, right? Season 3 and 4, we're no strangers to losing matches. And
yeah,
so like we stuck through, and just like then it's just like, man, that's part of BattleBots. Sometimes you win some, you lose some, and now we're losing to those top tier robots, right? So it's a step up, and now we just got to make sure that we can, stay up there.
yeah, I feel like it has definitely been a wake-up call in that everybody on our team is sort of reevaluating what our goals are and sort of what we want to try next year and what changes we want to make. I don't want to put the sort of carriage ahead of the horse, but I feel like there's a lot of ideas out there. So, we'll talk about that later, of course, but we're super excited to share sort of what we're working on. But yeah, I think it'll be cool. It's very different and will be interesting. But in any case,
yeah, in the vein of future stuff,
in the vein
seems
of
reasonable.
things.
Yeah, seems reasonable. We'll have, I think it's 4 or 5 robots at the March 18th Norwalk Havoc robot event, who are awesomely one of our sponsors this year. If you don't ever watch any of their stuff, you should. You can do a lot of crazy fun stuff in the smaller weight classes. We're also using it as a bit of a proving ground for some ideas for big robots. Alex, what are we looking at right here?
Image not related to proving ground for big robots.
Oh yeah, no, this is not not happening.
But this is Dutch oven, so it's a flamethrower grabby robot. So we'll see how it does. It should be fun. It was supposed to compete in January, but got lost in shipping. So now I'm just gonna have to hand deliver it in March and go fight it. So it should be fun.
Definitely. And just to clarify, this is in Norwalk, Connecticut in the Northeast. And for instance, I'm currently in Boston, and there are some super convenient trains from New York. You can take the Metro Rail right into town, and it's like 7 minutes from the venue. So feel free to either stream online. They do a great show that they produce all day long. But if you want to come in person, there's also tickets, and you can speak to not just us, but a ton of builders also participate. So it's a super great event, and I just love going and meeting people. So definitely come through. And speaking of Norwalk, they're one of our fabulous sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors, all listed here. And if you would like to buy any merch, poker chips, so on, check out our store at seemsreasonable.shop. That helps enable our goofy behavior and help us build new robots in the future. Now that we've been obliterated, we definitely need any help that we can get.
Plenty of spares get used.
Yeah, but anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. Please watch Tantrum versus Blip happening Thursday night on Discovery. And thank you for following us this season. Leave any comments, follow us on social media. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.